in the old days, you sold a product, right? It was off the shelf. You bought it. It was in, and there was maintenance, right? And that maintenance went into the bug fixes and other things. And then if you wanted to, improve the product, those improvements were usually part of some new module that you would sell and then add that into the maintenance cost. And it allowed for a true maintenance. And I think every innovation has a little bit of a byproduct that you don't see coming. And SaaS is software as a service. So you're literally paying to use the software consistently, which was supposed to reduce your total overhead costs, your maintenance costs, any of the upkeep of internal IT that could be offset and pay for the product itself. But unfortunately, I think, and I'll be interested, Trent, with what you're doing and Travis with what you're doing right now, it also kind of drove for continuous innovation or adding new things to keep people happy. And it got away from the maintenance of the product. And I think we've seen some, I don't know if I want to call it scope creep, as it were. And I think this is some right sizing from scope creep too. So Travis, I'm interested.
I think the big change that you really saw was when the software, especially became web-based, because you were no longer shipping out DVDs or flash drives or anything. So releasing software became really, really easy. So I think that was like you were saying, like it balanced out this fact that, hey, we can release pretty much on demand all the time, all these bug fixes, all these updates. So I think the software industry probably took on some of that as this is a benefit to you. You're paying for this within a subscription. But I think that, like you're saying, that it did end up into a lot of scope creep because I think the customers kind of got used to that too. It's like, you mean I can fix this button in my software right now, or I can have this feature built out and it's released immediately? I can see that pressure being put on those software companies to do that kind of stuff. Trent, are you seeing it from your side?
Yeah, and I mean, look, there's just been an evolution in the way software is deployed. And even the way it's utilized. I mean, like you said, so much is web-based now. And a lot of what we do at Stratus, like we're in a collaborative environment where we're even talking about, how we're deploying across, large companies and individual users that are pushing work to a common environment. And I mean, so, it makes sense for us to follow that model because, we can charge a subscription fee. And I mean, there's costs involved in that. And we're continually updating like the same environment for maybe 50, 100 or 150 users within that environment without like taxing their internal teams to deploy that fix to 50, 100 or 150 individual users. So it's, it's a different model. And I mean, it's obviously become very popular, but I think there are a lot of minds out there that are still kind of in that like a la carte, methodology. Like, maybe I don't want somebody to spend my money for me. And then there's nothing wrong with that. But I mean, definitely if you're in a subscription base, I mean, nothing says you can't kind of, have an inquisition or an, question that company a little bit about what they're getting for that. I mean, I would advise it. We do customer roadmap meetings and, we talk about things that are, there is some transparency to it, but people want to know what they're paying for. And I think there's just a different way you're paying for it in the SaaS method versus, individual deployment or the way of old where you might have got a disc. Maybe you had a disc.
Well, and I kind of wonder. I wonder if it changed the mindset. I think that the consumers even got used to it because I think that, especially from a contracting side, like we'll just take BIM for a while or CAD. There was people that would use that perpetual license of CAD for 10 years because it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Sure,
but then they started getting used to having what is it, if we're talking to Autodesk, you have 3 years window to use the software, and then you're forced to upgrade. And I wonder if that started to change the mindset. Like they're used to getting forced all these new features and updates, and that's just become what they come accustomed to. John, you were going to say something.
I was going to say that I don't think it's the same for all. Like for Stratus, for things that deploy the web app, I totally understand the SaaS model. But for everything else, it feels like you're throwing out my tools. ahead of time. Like I got a tool, I get it set up to do a job. It does that job. It does it effectively. And then you basically come along and say, that's cool. We'll give you the new tool. But in order to get the new tool, you got to throw out your old tool. And that's where I'm getting frustrated is because, like it used to be, I'm going to pick on, what is it? Qubit doesn't exist anymore. So I can pick on them. They used to have this little key and all it did is it registered point clouds really well. So they went into every environment correctly, re-registered them in a unique way that's still even not done now, but even easier than what's done now. So like I actually held on to my hardware key from Qubit well into the time when the company no longer exists because I had a tool that worked that did my job. And I think that's the problem is, you get into a subscription system. It's like, yes, we're going to give you the new tool. And yes, it can do more jobs, but you don't have something set up to do it. Like, I mean, in my shop, I have 5 grinders. I don't want one grinder that can do 5 things. I want 5 grinders. So I can set them up to do different things. And that's what they do. And so I think there's a mindset that there's room for both, but I can see why everything going SaaS isn't necessarily the right move.
I think you need to ask a question internally, like there's different types of software that we deploy in an organization. I mean, am I solving a point solution for one particular end user, or is this like a company-wide, is this a system that's deployed company-wide in a common methodology to everyone in my organization? I mean, there's different methods, and I think it should affect the way you look at how you should prefer paying for that software.
Well, but I will take this fun contrarian view because I actually came from the days of selling and installing an on-prem system and then charging maintenance for it. And all we heard from our customers was, what are we paying you all this money for if it already runs? And it's like, okay, but you do realize that like your operating systems are getting patched every day. The SQL backend's getting patched.
They don't
every day.
realize that. That's the thing.
No, they don't. And the framework's getting patched every day. And you expect that this stuff's just going to work as you update those things. And we're working to update those things. That's why we're charging you this maintenance fee. So that's why when the original SaaS stuff came out, we were like, oh, cool. We can take all that on ourselves and control as those things change and control how we update and roll them in. And we can just charge you and go this way. And so it's really funny because I actually have predicted this for a while. And how many places have all 3 of you been where some of the biggest conversations in leadership is the current cost of SaaS software and your licensing, which actually goes back to this article where I think this is cool because I think this is where people have realized that there is a factor for consolidation. There's an opportunity to dig into the products that they have and how much they've changed. That was the other thing is like you used to buy a software and it didn't change that much. Now it changes leaps and bounds and probably can push other things out the door and you can consolidate, which is what I think see here. And I'm just going to tease this for some other later thing, but I think the same thing's coming when it comes to AI. And I think we have a big bill to pay. I think it's going to make this SaaS thing like where we're all talking about, I wish we were back at them good old SaaS days.